Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into my official NFL Top 10 Best Bets here for week number 4, where I go through 10 bets that I really like. Starting with number 10, it is the Vegas Raiders traveling to SoFi Stadium, and there's just too much unknown about this Las Vegas team. Jimmy Garoppolo, is he going to be playing, dealing with that concussion, kind of on a little bit of a short week considering they did play on Sunday night. You take a look at this Chargers team really breaking out last week on offense. They very nearly dropped to 0-3, but they are sitting at 1-2. You lose Mike Williams, but you still do have the rookie first-round pick Quentin Johnston. You do have Keenan Allen, who's been a superstar, and Josh Palmer, who's a decent receiver as well. So I just think in this situation, the Chargers, who have struggled to cover spreads, are set up this week in a very positive position to do that, minus the 5.5. The Raiders, again, dealing with the quarterback uncertainty. Even if Jimmy G plays, really disappointing against the Steelers. You know, they had a lot of yards, but not a lot of points. I thought they were going to win that game and cover. They end up not doing either, and both of these teams sitting at 1-2. So I will take the Chargers. They are at home. You know, home field advantage with SoFi. It's not great, especially for them, but I will say they win this game. And really, they score a bunch of points. They just outscore the Raiders, possibly dealing with a backup quarterback. Number 9, it is Seattle, plus the 1.5. I think Seattle wins this game outright. Now, you could make the argument this is a correction game. Seattle drops to 2-2. The Giants improve to 2-2. But realistically, I just think the Giants, especially without Saquon Barkley, are not a good football team. You can say, well, San Francisco's better than everyone. That's why they lost on Thursday night. But that was not a competitive football game. That looked like there was one 3-win team going up against an elite team, and the elite team did what they should do. The Giants were just not competitive at all in that football game. And Seattle, they had a bad week 1. They've been able to bounce back. We'll see how they do on the road, going West Coast to East Coast in a Monday night game. Kind of a weird matchup. But again, it's a situation. Saquon Barkley, will he play? Will they really risk him in this one? Maybe, because they don't want to fall to 1-3, but certainly if he doesn't play, if it comes out that he's not playing, the line movement in this game, Seattle's going to be the favorite. I mean, they'll probably go to like -2 or -3. I think it'll probably become a pick'em pretty soon anyways, just because the Giants have been so bad this year. Even in the game they won against the Cardinals, they were getting crushed. They didn't cover the spread, and then this past week they were sitting like +10, and they get destroyed by San Francisco, and then obviously week 1 losing 40-0. So I just feel like Seattle, you know, you could say it's the NFL, weird things happen, the Giants are going to pull it off, they're at home, I get it, but based on everything that we know, Seattle plus 1.5 is great value. They probably should be the favorite, and if Saquon Barkley gets ruled out, they will be the favorite. Moving on to number 8, it is the Sunday night game. It's the Chiefs at the Jets. The Chiefs sitting -9.5. It feels like Vegas really doesn't know how to make Jets spreads right now, because the Jets have a great defense and just a horrible, horrible quarterback. Zach Wilson is not an NFL level QB. They keep starting him. I will take KC -9.5 or lower. The only reason I'm saying the Jets have a little bit of a chance of covering is because of that defense, extremely good, especially at home at MetLife. But we saw what the Chiefs did against another bad team, the Bears. They completely disregarded them, and we could be looking at a similar situation here. I'll say they end up covering the 9.5 just barely. Moving on to number 7, it is the Steelers at the Houston Texans. So we're going to say the under 42.5. You know, CJ Stroud, he has been good in this early season, certainly looking like a franchise QB, but he's still a rookie going up against a decent Pittsburgh defense. Also, the Steelers, tons of question marks about them and their offense. They really have issues sustaining long drives. A lot of their scoring this year has come off of like fluky 70-yard massive explosive plays, and if you cut those down, they're really not scoring very much. So to me, these are just two offenses that aren't going to score enough to go over the 42.5. And also, I would take Houston plus the 3 in this one, although it is a really hard game to gauge because you have a very young quarterback starting just his 4th game, while he's had success, this is not a Houston roster that's necessarily loaded. It's not like they have a true elite number one receiver where you can really count on them. So betting Houston right now is very risky because you're dealing with a very unpredictable QB situation with the rookie quarterback. The Steelers, on the other hand, they've got a good defense, a bad offense. That's pretty much what they are at this point. Kenny Pickett's really going to have to start proving something for me to trust them. So I'll say the under 42.5 in that one. Moving on to number 6, it is the Patriots traveling to Dallas. So this feels like a get-right game for the Cowboys. I'll take Dallas minus the 7. After the brutal loss last week, they were massive favorites, 12-point favorites over Arizona. They end up losing. And to me, it's just the Patriots do not have any playmakers at this point. I know they have, Stevenson, Mac Jones. I guess he's okay. He's serviceable. But they really need an elite receiver, and they just don't have that. They should have. I guess they did try and get DeAndre Hopkins, but either way, it just feels like this game, you've got a Patriots team. They won 15-10 last week. They covered. The Cowboys didn't cover. Feels like this is a correction game. Dallas will end up covering in this one, the minus 7. It's just the Patriots do not have enough on offense to hang at this point. Moving on to number 5, it is Baltimore traveling to Cleveland. So I love Cleveland minus the 2.5. Their defense this year, there is a storyline that seems to be developing that the Browns are going to have one of, if not the best defense in the NFL with the way Denzel Ward is playing. You've got Newsome on the opposite side. You've got Delpit, the safety, and then obviously Myles Garrett, the superstar pass rusher who had like 3.5 sacks last week. Baltimore, on the other hand, they had the game against Indianapolis. They were sitting minus 8, and they end up losing that game outright in overtime. There was a controversial pass interference call, but still, I said I love the Colts plus 8 with Gardner Minshew, and they end up easily covering and winning outright. So now I'm in on the Browns. I think Baltimore will be fine. They're going to drop to 2-2, but this is a game where you've got the Browns at home. You have Deshaun Watson. No one really knows what to make of him. He's had a very strange career. He was a franchise quarterback. He's got all the suspension time. He comes back. He's really rusty, but last week was the best game of his Browns career. No turnovers, or at least no interceptions, and the Browns won that game easily 27-3. I think, it's just going to be very hard for Lamar Jackson to throw the ball against this Browns defense, so I'll take them covering the spread. It'll be competitive. It's an AFC North defensive battle. Moving on to number 4, it is the London game, the 9:30 a.m. game, and we're going to go in on Jacksonville here. So this is more so, I still think Trevor Lawrence is a franchise quarterback. I'm not letting 3 games early in the season really affect that. You have an Atlanta team who I still believe is worse than their record. Last week they were 2-0. I said that's ridiculous. Even in this situation, they're sitting at 2-1. I think they lose to the Jags. And Bijan Robinson should have a much better game in this one. It's just tough because at this point, it's very clear that Desmond Ridder, he's not your future quarterback. He can be a capable backup that can come in and start a few games, but for a team like Atlanta, they really need to find their future quarterback. And at this point, I really think Trevor Lawrence, you've got Calvin Ridley, who's still a beast. That offense is really going to get clicking with Christian Kirk, and they'll end up easily covering the 3-point spread. You're getting the Jags at a big discount here because of their horrible performance last week against Houston. And yes, it was a terrible performance, but it's the NFL. It's week by week. Things change, and I will take Jacksonville to bounce back and cover the 3 in that one. Moving on to number 3, best bet, it is Denver traveling to Chicago. I'll take the over 46. So to me, this is a situation where Denver's offense has shown a lot more life this year than last year, and their defense, surprisingly, normally Denver at least has an average defense. Their defense has been terrible. The Commanders game, letting Sam Howell throw for all those yards. Obviously, the Dolphins with a 70 burger. They possibly could have had an 80 burger if they really would have tried for it, but both of these teams 0-3. There's desperation. Justin Fields at this point, he's playing for his NFL life. He's going to be running all over the field. You've got Denver right now sitting minus 3.5. I would say Denver wins this game just because the Bears look completely dysfunctional. And last week, it legitimately looked like an FCS versus an FBS team when the Chiefs destroyed them. Like you could tell from the first minute that was not going to be a game. It was crazy how uncompetitive that game was, considering it's an NFL game. Also, the Bears' defense last week was terrible, albeit you are facing Mahomes. But to me, this is a game where Russell Wilson's shown some things. He throws for 3 touchdowns. Justin Fields runs for 2 touchdowns. And we get an over 46 on that one. The number 2 best bet, it is Minnesota minus the 3.5 at Carolina. So not really a fan of minus 3.5. I'd much rather get it at minus 3 or obviously minus 2.5. This is another 0-3 matchup between these two teams. This is just me thinking that, Andy Dalton, for as good as he was last week, Carolina still didn't even cover. They lost 37-27, so even though Andy Dalton really kind of impressed people, Adam Thielen, the massive game, they don't even cover that. So Minnesota, this is a get-right game for them. Obviously, they're sitting 0-3. They're taking on a ton of water at this point. They really need this one, and I think Jordan Addison possibly gets in the end zone. We know Justin Jefferson's going to have, 100 yards or whatever, but Minnesota, Kirk Cousins has been good this year. They're going to start winning. It's going to start showing. 3.5 on the road's not great, but if it's Andy Dalton, which I'm guessing it's going to be, even if it was Bryce Young, you may have Minnesota sitting like -5 if it was Bryce Young, but I really think they're just going to give Bryce Young a few weeks off. It's going to be Andy Dalton, and I don't think he'll play nearly as well as he did last week, so give me Minnesota to cover the -3.5. And then number 1, it is Buffalo -2.5. I will take them over Miami. So all of the general public is going to go in on Miami plus the 2.5 after what happened last week. How can Miami, a team that dropped 70 points, a team that's 3-0, how can they possibly be underdogs at Buffalo? Well, guys, Buffalo, they had that weird week 1. Josh Allen, the turnovers, he does have an issue with those, but after that, they've gotten 2 very easy wins. They totally crushed the Raiders at home, and then they destroyed the Commanders, who were sitting at 2-0 on the road, and now Buffalo's at home, and you just know this is how the NFL works. All the sharps are going to be in on Buffalo -2.5. All of the general public's going to be in on Miami plus 2.5, and it's very likely that Buffalo is going to end up covering in this game. They're still a good team, and they are at home. They've got that good home field advantage, and guys, remember, NFL is week to week. It's not like Miami starts this game up 14-0 just because they scored 70 points last week. It's going to be 0-0. Miami, they might come out, have a 3-and-out. It's not surprising. This is the NFL. It's week to week. I know they scored a bunch. Devin Achane could come out this game and have 10 total yards. That's just the reality of the situation. Maybe they get shut down in terms of running, but it's a week to week thing. Just because Miami scored all those points last week, it doesn't mean they're automatically guaranteed to score 38 points and win this game. It's just not how it works. So, in a different environment, I will take Buffalo just off the basis of learning, the NFL through the years. You kind of see these patterns develop when it comes to games like this, where it's like, how is Buffalo favorites? It makes no sense. Well, Buffalo's still 2-1, and they're coming off 2 easy wins, and they're at home. And so I'll take them minus the 2.5. So guys, those are my official top 10 NFL best bets for week number 4. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.